I know I'm a little bit late, but Happy New Year, better yet, Happy New Decade. I figured what better way to celebrate than with a video themed accordingly. So today we are turning back the clock and looking at fashion through the last 10 decades. Obviously, a lot of trends come and go within each 10-year window, so it's quite difficult to narrow it down to one condensed outfit. And considering I am not a fashion historian, I just want you guys to bear with me here because we are definitely just taking a sliver of what was actually worn and then applying it to my own wardrobe. But since history does tend to repeat itself, I thought it would just be a bit of fun to look at the styles that have paved the way for what we're wearing currently. Kind of hard to believe that the Roaring 20s was 100 years ago now, but it has definitely stood the test of time, being one of the most iconic periods for fashion, one that people still like to take inspo from today. This is undeniably in large parts thanks to the flapper style that emerged during this decade, and it's something that people continue to come back to, I think because it was such a change from what we had seen for decades and decades prior. This is often stated as a time where people were finding a new sense of freedom, which is why they were a little bit more experimental, raising the hemlines, probably not as high as people may make out, and also quite a bit of emphasis on textures, especially with beading and embroidery. Fringe, however, was probably not as popular as we have been led to believe, but I still threw in just a little bit for good measure. Over the years, new generations have seemingly continued to resonate and kind of be captivated by the 20s. I think that is because of the success of films like Great Gatsby that do kind of help us paint this very dreamy image in our head, which perhaps wasn't quite the case in all reality. I don't know if it's just me, but I don't really see or hear too much about 1930s fashion, so I did have to dig a little bit deeper, and this isn't perfect. Ideally, I would love to have a bias cut gown because that is definitely the one thing I think the 30s are well known for, but I have taken in a few other key elements. A sense of sophistication and glamour really came about in the 30s. Even just your everyday, ordinary people really started looking up to what the stars on the silver screen were wearing, hence the glamorous side of things. There were a lot of evening gowns in silks, chiffons. There were often a few added trims like ruffles, this little capelet that I have, and originally I wanted to wear like a fur stole as well, but I actually just got shipping confirmation on that today, so unfortunately it's not featured, but imagine something a little bit more luxurious to top this look off. We definitely saw a shift in women's wear during the 40s because of course it was when women started going to work while the men were out at war, and I really wanted to capture that in today's outfit, and it turned out to be one of my favorites, so I'm really pleased with how this turned out. I really think this embodies the overall silhouette quite well, and Christian Dior actually played a huge role in this by unveiling his new look, which was a lot of cinched waist belts. And after scrolling through quite a few images from that time, I noticed they often teamed them with these slightly cropped style jackets, so that's exactly what I did today, and of course finished it off with my beret tilted down and to one side. I never know how to wear them, but I think this does the trick. For me, the first thing that comes to mind for the 50s is that very commercial housewife sort of image that we've been shown over the years, and overall the silhouette is very similar to the 40s, but they have added some more feminine elements, I would say, with the colors and patterns and also the accessories with the popularity of pearls. My yellow gingham dress is actually vintage from the 50s, but I felt like it was lacking some volume in the skirt, so I wanted to pair a petticoat underneath. Now, the only one I have is more so for cosplay purposes, so as you can see, they don't gel too well together, and you can clearly see that it's sitting kind of awkwardly, so please do try and excuse that. I don't think it would have been that bad if the dress wasn't so thin, but we're making it work. Finally, we have made it to the 60s, one of my personal favorites, and this is where we start to see a little bit more variation in trends as well. And I'm sure there was previously too, but since the 60s is a little bit more recent, I feel as though they just haven't let us forget yet. So there were quite a few different subcultures. One of the most famous and one of my favorites is mod. This is a style that was popularized in London and really just blew up from there. I actually have a full Pinterest board dedicated to this because I love to take inspiration from it. They really knew how to play around with colors, also textures. There's a lot of plastics and vinyls. The white accessories I love. And also we're finally getting to a stage where we can experiment more with makeup. Of course, the 60s is where the miniskirt became a desirable style, and really it has never gone out of fashion ever since. Once again, the 70s are drawing us in different directions, but two main ones that come to mind are disco and also that more carefree hippie style, which is often associated with more warm and neutral tones, but I wanted to switch it up a little bit because there were still some funky color combos going on. When I came out in this, Sam actually said I looked as though I could have played Fez's love interest in one episode of that 70s show, and I took that as a compliment because that was exactly my aim. I think this still has a lot of elements we're familiar with, like the flares, the accessories, and also the vest, because you guys know I love a vest, and I feel like the 70s really popularized that as a more unisex item, so forever thankful. And this outfit is proudly head to toe from the thrift store, except for the bag, which was actually handmade by my mum because she still remembers how to macrame from back in the 70s. Very generally speaking, the 80s is considered a little bit of a down point in comparison to the decades either side it when it comes to style, but it still had a lot to offer, whether it be good or bad. It was definitely in your face. We could have gone for neon, spandex, leg warmers, high-waisted jeans, shoulder pads, amongst many others, but I decided to opt for this almost Madonna-inspired look. Polka dots and acid wash were seen a lot, so 2 ticks already. The oversized waist belt, the layered accessories, and of course, you cannot forget the big hair topped off with the scrunchie. I also tried to bring in a little bit of color with my eyeshadow and makeup in general. And although this isn't something I would wear today, I wanted to try and keep it somewhat authentic instead of just copping out and doing high-waisted jeans and a windbreaker. The 90s is probably one of the most popular eras for fashion, and it's easy to see why. They almost have a little bit of something for everyone, from preppy to grunge and everything in between. With that being said, it made it extremely difficult to narrow it down to just one outfit, but I decided to take inspiration from two of the most iconic style icons from TV, Rachel Green and Ashley Banks. Although plaid skirts weren't originated in the 90s, it is often associated with it, so I had to include it today along with some layered tops. This calf length boot was very popular in the late 90s and in my opinion still one of the most flattering lengths. This whole outfit is something I totally would have worn if I was a student in the 90s. Hell, if I was a student today, I would still be rocking this. Okay, I am just gonna need you to brace yourself for this next one because although Y2K is very popular at the moment, we see it a lot on Instagram, keep in mind we are really just taking the best bits and adapting it to our styles today. For the purpose of this video, I did want it to be more authentic, so I am wearing these low-rise denim jeans and I cannot believe I am actually putting this on the internet. This is one of the only trends I truly despise, but I had to channel my inner Christina Aguilera, a little bit of Britney, and rock this fit today. To be fair, not everyone styled it with insane amounts of stomach showing, but I really did want to get that pop star Y2K look. which is why I teamed it with a baby tee and also a stomach chain. Ideally, I would have my belly button pierced and have like a fake glittery tattoo, but I thought this would do just fine. If you guys are looking to adapt more wearable 2000s trends for today, there is a bunch of that on my channel already, so I will leave some links down below. The most ridiculous part of this entire video is that the 2010s was my biggest challenge. Turns out we took a lot of inspiration from previous decades, but I really wanted something more original, so in 40 years time, this is what I think would be remembered as, and a few things sprung to mind. Really ugly shoes, hypebeast and flex culture, the full-blown Kardashian and Jenner takeover. When I was asking friends and family, their first response every time was athleisure, so that's what we're going with, but this is not at all a representation of what I wore this decade. I literally had to go out and buy these leggings because I don't have any. But I do believe this is a pretty fair representation of what we'll be remembered for in years to come, because it ticks quite a few boxes. It has that Yeezy sort of vibe with a lot of neutral colors being very popular, also minimal silhouettes. Obviously, it was the culture of being thick. It's something that would show off your curves, something that Kylie Jenner or Kim Kardashian would wear, and also kind of fits into that stereotypical Instagram baddie. So that finally brings us up to speed. I hope you enjoyed this trip down memory lane. Give it a thumbs up if you did, and let me know in the comments what is your favorite decade for fashion. Mine is a close call between 60s and 90s. I'm excited to see what the new year brings us, and if you're interested in seeing more fashion content, then hopefully you can stick around on this channel, and I'll see you in my next one.